Hello, everyone. This is very loud. Uh-oh. Is this better?
We're gonna turn this one off. I'm gonna go my place. Hi, everybody. Welcome to Asian American Writers Workshop. It's so lovely to have you here. I'm Devin. I'm the Deputy Director. And we really appreciate you joining us as we get into the weekend. There's a little soft hissing of water. These spaces are so important amidst global grief, and I hope it feels like a homecoming being here with us. We only reopened in October, so we're still getting used to the swing of things. Everything is sort of mishmash, and I hope you can appreciate that. Masks are required for all guests. If you don't have one, there's a basket right at the front. There are two gender-neutral bathrooms, one here and then one through the kitchen. And if there's any other access needs you have, feel free to find me or my colleague Sophia in the back or over here. Tonight is a very special night. And I feel like it's been a long time coming. We've been like, when is it going to happen? Finally, it's March. And we're here to celebrate Sok and her new book, Put It on Record, Memoir-Archive, right here. Wow. This collection of essays and photographs gorgeously explores memory, time, and archive, and aptly tonight will be woven with word, song, and also a dance party. Books are available for purchase and signing at the end of the evening. They'll be back there. Sokunthary Svay is a Cambodian poet, essayist, and librettist from New York City. She's a founding member of the Cambodian American Literary Arts Association. She's a doctoral candidate in English at the CUNY Graduate Center and a lecturer at CCNY in Harlem. Author of a poetry collection and 3 opera libretti, and of course her hybrid memoir, Put It on Record. That's available from Willow Books, and she is just a joy, and I feel really grateful to know you and to have been working on this event with you. She'll be joined by Anthony Lanni, right there, a New York City-based 6- and 7-string guitarist with a focus on Brazilian and Italian music. As a soloist, Anthony performs his own instrumental solo guitar arrangements of traditional Brazilian songs. His band's original music celebrates Brazil's rich musical heritage, combining Brazilian rhythms and English lyrics. And kicking off our evening, we have the amazing Allia Abdullah-Matta, and she is a poet and professor of English at CUNY LaGuardia. She writes about the culture and history of Black women and explores the presence of Black bodies and voices in fine art and poetry. Her Do-Si-Do double chapbook, which is not available tonight, Wash, Clean, and Blues Politico, was published by Harlequin Creatures in 2021. She is working on a poetry and hybrid collection of poems and images entitled Black Print. With that, let's welcome Allia to the stage. I'm gonna just move this because I don't want to make it.
Oh, good evening. I'm sorry, I didn't hear you. Good evening. You know, my culture is all about call and response, as are many of our cultures. So I just want to thank you all for coming into this space. I want to thank my friend here who invited me. And it's just lovely to be a part of this amazing event. So thank you. So I'm going to start with the invocation. Can you hear me okay? Yeah? Okay. Miss Baha, she be peace, caramel skin and velvet brown lashes, 3/4 moon black eyes. She prayed by the river every night near sundown, sun burning orange, blue, and then night. She prayed songs to the key of the blue-orange sky. Save us, save us, save us. Her temples blood rush red, vein to vein, toes clenched, entangled and tinged. Her head spinning, sins of the dead and long gone. Her fingertips touch Miss Baha beats. Words mingle in mud, incoherence. Keep us, keep us, keep us. And I dedicate this to anyone who still needs saving in this world. Darkness, trigger warnings. Heartbeat, 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 beat, beat, beat. He used to beat me for being hungry, for wanting more than corn slop and pig ear scraps. How could I feed any of them babies, especially my own child, if I was too hungry and weak to make milk? I can't always say all of what they did to me. Giving birth to babies, mothering and breastfeeding other people's children ain't really work to them, you know. Well, we don't work enough for them ever, you know. I work and worked every hour outside of the time I spend suckling them babies, and taking a beating from the devil and his servant wife is work too. Beat, beat, beat. I can't always say all of what they did to me. Darkness. Heartbeat, heartbeat, heart, beat, 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 beat. New England cold. We supposed to have winter breeches. The wind beats my face, blushes my cheeks, frostbite red, then purple. She likes when my cheeks are cold, cracked, and purple. The cold makes me look unpretty for a few minutes. She liked me ugly, looking unpretty. She would beat me into a coma if she knew. She did beat me comatose when she knew. I learned to create powders and salves from the seer women, blush my face with the darker powder made from burnt tobacco leaves and a pinch of indigo, soothe the cold and coat my skin. Yamaya. I walk the loop around the harbor. She sends me to fetch people and to fetch her shit. I loop around the harbor 1, 2, 3 times. Give the powder time to settle. I couldn't say what they did to me till today. Yamaya, Yamaya, Yamaya. I need someone to come get me. I need someone to come get me. I need someone to come get me. Them. The ocean speaks to us. She acknowledges that we have come from far away, though our DNA has a place here. She soothes our ferry ride through her turbulent waves towards this island, the island of our past and present. We return to the door of no return. We return to the door of no return. We return to the door of no return. We walk along the island to the cave. Vendors shouted us to buy their things, acrylic and watercolored paintings, wood carvings, sculptures, and pure shea butter, fried fish cakes, multicolored beaded bracelets, anklets, and cowrie shelled items. Their shouts are insensitive to our first walk on this island after so many years away. They see and do not see. They see we are the Blacks from the West. They do not see that we are of them or their lost kin. They see Washingtons, Lincolns, and Franklins. Western currency changed to Central African francs. They see capitalism. They do not see our tragic separation or lost histories. They see dollars, francs, and trips to America. They do not see how hard we have worked to come home. Them. I met a woman on a ferry with the cutest bald Black baby. He smiled at us and let us touch his pudgy feet. She asked us if we were co-wives to my friend's husband. Said we would make good co-wives and that polygamy strengthens the community. We played with her baby and said to ourselves, she crazy. This woman on the ferry had a market stall on the island. When we found her later, after the libations for our lost souls, after the walk through the caves, the touch of loss, drizzled blood, tears, the gloom of bondage, and our breakdowns from the doorway, staring at the ocean waves bubbling up at us. and those imaginary ships through that door of our return. We brought some of her trinkets, smiled, and made small talk in French, though she never asked us how it felt to be home. We returned to the door of no return. We returned to the door of no return. We returned to the door of no return. Sister, they call me Leah. You came all this way in 2023 after centuries. My line still rests here. We be of Geechee and sadly some white blood mixed in. Some of us never made it to Charleston, NYC, Chicago, or LA. It was a long ride, you know, rotten and broken bodies chained up and down and around, hand to foot, foot to hand. We could not talk to another across tribes and tongues, against beats and rhythms, but we knew this would not be good for any of us. We smelled feces, piss, and sperm, period blood, and afterbirth, smelled the death of others. For hours, days, weeks, salt water could not heal us. From Gold Coast shores to South Carolina, from ship bellies to McLeod Plantation, Massa's house, cotton fields, mud, waterlogged cabin, walls and floors, living 12 by 12 in a 2 by 2. From the bowels of the modern city, traffic lights, microwaves, and AC, indoor plumbing, toilet flushes, and hot water showers, lavender shower gel, and cocoa mango body butter. We made our own soap, cakes of brown lye that never lathered up enough, homemade bleach, used our hands, stones, and the washboard when we had one. Hot water burned and scalded our arms, hands, and fingertips to the bones. Washed and ironed for years to buy ourselves back. Worked to the bone to buy land, scrubbed the clothes of the folks who infringed on us, infringed on our lives on a regular. Thought we had no lives to speak of or to protect. Broken families, sold away kids, husbands, parents, and cousins. I was on the McLeod Plantation on a warm and windy southern South Carolina Tuesday. The wind whispered her words. You came all this way. Tell them I was here. Tell them, tell them, tell them. They called me Leah, and tell them you be my cousin. We be of Geechee and sadly some white blood mixed in. Some of us never made it to Charleston, NYC, Chicago, or LA. So I'm writing these poems based on photographs now. So this is something that I just want to say that before I start. So this is untitled. So it starts with, I was living the dream, believing the things that just ain't true. And that's by Jill Scott. 1, when you grew up in the South and your mama and daddy were tenant farmers, you know that land is essential. That cows produce milk and provide meat. That chickens produce eggs and provide fried or baked chicken. That you can always feed your family as long as you hold the land. You work hard to keep the land, pay land tax and grow things, collards, turnips, corn, whatever the soil can sustain and sprout to feed your family. Instead of overpaying overripe fruit and vegetables, overcharge for grain, seed, meal, and cloth, running a tab at the general store only to overpay the people who hate you. You work overtime to keep white people off the land, away from your daughters, and hanging your sons from your own oak trees. Answer folks using yes, sir, and ma'am, who have not earned this kind of respect. But you are trying to live and take care of your own, so you hold the land and believe the dream. 2, by 1939, they had moved north, believing in things that just ain't true. packed themselves up and left the land with the older aunties. No more outhouse or smokehouse. Worked for city-fied white folks, had at least one day off and maybe a few days on another day. Wore themselves coats with fur collars, hats tipped to the side with pearl-ended hat pins, brooches on their scarves or pearls around their necks, dressed up for the 1939 New York City World Fair in Flushing, Queens. Dawn of a new day, they called it. They posed for pictures looking fine and dignified, their intent to show the South, the North, and the world they were humans worthy of mobility. They believed in things that just ain't true. 3. Annie liked her hat cocked to the left side. She favored the left side of things that she believed to be true, did not sway towards the tradition of the right side, Blackness, womanness, cute or quietness. Her tongue, slick and sassy, spoke her mind until she did not make as much sense, could not make sense to her kinfolks and other folks, could not quiet the voice inside herself, that voice that swayed her to the left side. Some years before the World's Fair, when her baby girl was about 10, her almost husband, we'll call him Ronnie Earl, decided to have another on his left arm, her left arm. Ronnie Earl stole her money from the small black jewelry trunk tucked under the mattress in the dugout box spring, because she knew better than to trust white folks' banks. And the Carver Federal Savings on Merrick did not open until 1948. So her dollar stayed in the house. Since he decided to take it, she decided to wait for him on the corner of Linden Boulevard. 3 weeks later, when he thought she had calmed the voice, she, with a cute knife in her white gloved hand inside her coat pocket. Ronnie Earl was all alone, as he had just walked the other lefty to her room in the boarding house on Sayers Avenue. The lesson here: don't pick up a lefty too close to where you stay with your almost wife. She smiled and waved him over with her empty white gloved hand, clasped his fingers tight, pulled him in close for a kiss, whipped out the cute knife, nicked his left cheek without getting a drop of blood on her white gloved hand, smiled at him and said, "Good night, love." Headed back down Linden Boulevard away from Merrick and stopped in the sweet shop for a chocolate and caramel sundae with extra whipped cream and 2 cherries on top. So I'm gonna read one more. I love that poem. It's like when you write something, you're like, oh my God, that's how I feel about that. It's just the beginning. So over. I prefer keeping my love high up on the closet shelf, Senegalese sunsets, and dance moves that rock to the beat. I prefer being Black, even if you hate me. My Southern roots, mine is sharecropping mornings and Jim Crow nights. Mine is colored-only bathrooms and water fountains, Bull Connor's dogs, Alabama bombings, and minus Emmett, Medgar, King, X, Bland, Gray, and Brown. How many punches does it take? 1, 2, 3, or 7? Body jerks and blood screams with each bullet. Stefan, blue-clothed shooters. DA will not charge in Sacramento. Cali murder and consequence reigns Black, body, death, choke, depression, domestic violence, suicidal thoughts, be blamed the victim chase, blurred background voices ping Cali air and ring his cell phone. I prefer not naming the newly lynched ones, their blood still too red and wet. I prefer freedom and not freedom myths, grandma's Sunday morning biscuits, grandpa's preaching and coconut pies, Georgia watermelons and collard greens, Shall we overcome or kick in the door waving a 4-4? I prefer not knowing the answer, to hold onto my Black purity, snap my fingers to James Brown, try to sing high like Prince, high and low without shame, wear what I want to wear, eat and drink what I want to. No more fatback in my collard greens. I prefer my collards with kale. I prefer love, but they trying in my anger, my patience, my sanity, stealing my quiet moments. I prefer my unborn grandbaby's births to burying a child. White Adidas sneakers to Black Crocs, reading poems and watching cop dramas on TV. My grandma shelled peanuts and talked politics, and she voted over and over and over again. Thank you.
It's not on. No.
Yes.
I can't change.
Oh,
Wow.
yeah.
That's right.
See, I didn't know I would have been nervous.
So we online, right?
Yes.
Okay, first of all, som Juliepso, som Swakom, welcome to welcome everybody, friends, family. Wow, this is finally happening, the first ever Cambodian American event at the Writers' Workshop. The first time I encountered this place, it was in St. Mark's in 1993 or 94. So I have like a history that spans a long time. It finally took long enough. That said, I just wanted to acknowledge the solidarities happening tonight. First, thanks to Allia. You know, I'm thinking about land, sea, and solidarity. So with the Middle Passage, Cambodian genocide, and also thinking about what's happening in Gaza right now with Palestinians. And so actually, I don't know if you'll know this, but the title of my book on record, it's a translation from Palestinian poet Mahmoud Darwish from his poem ID Card. So I had decided that title before October. It was just, I was thinking about how we lacked records as Cambodians. And so living as we are now, everything's on record. So this is my attempt at that. All right, there's changing the order up a bit. I'm going to read something because I think it makes more sense to have context before the music itself. Next slide, please. Oh yeah, I changed the. I changed the go to next slide. Change the order. Sorry, last minute things. Okay. The earliest form music in my household came in cassette tapes, orange with a white strip from Sony, with cutouts of white women from clothing catalogs pasted on the cassette covers. They had the name Sway G written carefully in capital letters on every single tape. This music content was old Khmer music, but then again, as a child, it also seemed old to me. There were hits from several decades before, a variety of genres, from Latin bolero, cha-cha, surf rock, go-go, and the twist, in addition to Cambodian popular dances. It's unclear how my mother and father got their hands on recordings as recent refugee arrivals and what underground market amassed these musical artifacts for the Khmer diaspora, clearly feeling nostalgic and in need of some connection to a lost homeland. These golden oldies were everywhere in our refugee community in the Bronx, as I imagine elsewhere in the country, wherever other refugees were placed. This was an impossible music to retrieve from local shops, seemingly obscure to most of the world, although now Khmer oldies are part of a larger category of retro music recordings available at various offbeat international music and niche record shops. By the time of this publication, I will have coached 3 Broadway singers. I have been the Khmer language consultant and vocal coach for the play Cambodian Rock Band. Cambodian rock band focuses on the story of a Cambodian father and daughter, Nchum and Niri, respectively, which flashbacks to a somewhat secret past during the time of the Khmer Rouge regime. In the flashback part of the play that takes place in Putnam Mall, there's a character named Sotia. Allow me to explain why this is significant for me. As a Khmer, I don't take these coincidences lightly. Upon working with Courtney Reed, the first singer I coached at the Signature Theater production, I brought a photo from my trip to Cambodia, when after a tour of the temples at Siem Reap, we embarked to the city of Putnam Mall, a city my parents has passed, their secrets, and eventually its disclosure. Next slide, please. I'm gonna say next slide. This poor guy here. After this is done, I promise. It was here my parents had lived during the Khmer Rouge regime. It was here in Putnam Mall that their son, my brother Sotia, died from dysentery as a toddler. It was here that they buried him. So when we stopped off in Putnam Mall, I thought it was for tourism. Upon arrival of the town's famous statue, which you see behind me, my father immediately hopped out of the van onto the back of a moto taxi. He took off without a word and so swiftly as though he had never left the country some 20 years earlier. My mother immediately expressed concern that he had gone off to look for their son. They had never given him a proper Buddhist burial since religion was outlawed along with the arts. We tried to follow behind and eventually found ourselves on the plot of land my parents called home during the dark time in Cambodian history. Next slide. An elder woman with a bald head now lived on the land. My mother, now caught up in my father's fervor, wanted to immediately dig up the land. It was strange to find the bones of Sotia, which sounds absurd now, this idea of overturning the land of the current owner. But my parents were in the middle of their own flashback, attempting to alter their history, that is, until the woman staved them off and then said, "The land is dusty, and his bones may have disappeared with the rest of the dirt in this country." Next slide. One last slow look at the land, and we left the property. By the end of the day, we were at the local temple where my parents and our entire family, over a dozen of us, prayed, making offerings for Sotias with his name written on them, so it wouldn't get lost on the way to wherever his soul currently resided. Next slide. That was the photo I showed to Courtney during one of our first sessions. I wanted her to know that some of us have to go home with this history presented in this play. This flashback in Cambodian rock band also takes place in Putnam Mall, which seemed to be another nod to my being on this production. Certainly a confluence of names, sounds, and events, but they seemed to intersect in a way that made my involvement feel like fate. It's not. I already include Sotia's name in my own writing as a way of giving him the life that he didn't get to experience. Working on this production will become another site of my own family's healing. There's a reckoning that occurred in the act of teaching these songs. It was the last thing I expected to happen, a reconciliation between my relationship with the Khmer language, my failed music career trajectory, and my parents' period in Putnam Mall when Sotia died. Watching the play some near 24 times now, I'm still struck by the vibrations from the live instruments as they filter their way through my body. Next slide. As the Cambodians of Cambodian rock band, Joseph Ngo, the lead, and I have our own heavy responsibilities that come with this narrative. I've heard Joe say that when he sings Jampa Putnam Mall, it's a not so secret homage to his family's hometown. This flower of Putnam Mall, with every cover, continues to bloom in a variety of ways for our people. Oh, but the moment ordered I Yung son lìa hai tiếng lạnh Nắng bị được nhắm bách lia từ nhai Qua vai Mình say bằng miền hai Oh, but the moment come with snow đã nhốt bật nát bên bề không để và xin chỉ cuộc nhung đi bỏ về sông ai Miss Night không lo nghịch nắng trăm Min värld var natten här. Någon av sång men inte vanskligt. Min värld var natten här. Någon av dem sång men inte vanskligt. Is that what bakom från att mina läppar jag heter. Jag tror det bara jag kan säga. Jag bara jump out of way. Jag bara jump out of way. Don't bow, don't have a Oh, just a heads up, I forgot the rules. Yeah, rules. The rules are you're not allowed to be quiet. That you must make sounds. This includes snapping, clapping, moaning, like my homegirl Allia does. That's how I know you, and that's how I remember you. We met 10 years ago in a creative writing graduate course, and I was like, damn, she knows a lot. But you know what? I'm gonna take it. So please follow her example. Okay. Next slide, please. This is for my dad. Hope he's watching. At the age of 13, there was one thing I had to go directly to my father for. I wanted to audition for music school, the Fame School, after the TV shows and film, if you know, though formerly known as LaGuardia High School of Music and Art and Performing Arts. If you're a parent in New York City, you know this too. This is how I did it. He was working the graveyard shift at the university at the time, keeping in mind that we didn't directly ask each other, oh no, battery.
Uh-oh. You might have me.
Oh no, we have to finagle this.
Right there.
So what you don't understand is like, we had to like jerry rig this.
There we go. We're gonna read this. Yeah, get on. Yep.
Oh my God, this pick, everyone.
I know.
Wait.
We're in.
You don't want me for your big group.
Oh, that's hot. That mic is hot. Can you turn it just a tiny bit? If it's possible, do that.
Let me see if I can.
You're with everybody. It's gonna be okay. I can also put new batteries in it. Also try that.
You know, while they do that, I can just speak from here. Wow.
Yeah.
Hello? Is that Shola? This is also, no, this is not.
Okay, keep talking.
Oh. Mic check, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. Kick in the door, wave in the 4, 4. Papa don't give me no more. I knew. That sounds good, thank you.
Is that singing volume?
Let me hold, yeah,
A little louder or?
just tiny bit,
Okay,
thank you.
all right.
Okay, so this is how I did it, how I got convinced my dad to let me go to music school. So, keeping in mind that we as Cambodians didn't directly ask each other for anything. The idea of writing out on paper was a bit risky, American even, but that's what I did. I handwrote him a letter begging him to allow me to audition for music school for flute. It was the early 1990s and I'd already invested 3 years of my life in a few flute lessons, 0-period rehearsals in junior high school, formed the Bronx Borough-wide band, and their orchestra played Pomp and Circumstance on loop for many a graduation. Maybe it was watching Fame as a kid, or maybe it's the fact that I already knew I would become a musician. Obviously, did not. I was destined for it. I had a variety of musical occupations, I imagined, producing video game music, playing the pit orchestra of a Broadway show, having a solo flute career, which included performing at Lincoln Center, composing musical theme songs or TV shows, composing film scores. I didn't get those ideas from anyone in my life, but I was fed enough television and music to influence me that the possibilities might have existed, along with the naivete and hope of a child. He agreed to let me audition on one condition. He insisted I write up a contract spelling out that I wouldn't blame him if I hated music school, to be signed and dated by both of us. A few weeks later, I was auditioning in the basement of LaGuardia High School, playing the flute part of Mozart's Eine kleine Nachtmusik. The next year was an entering freshman instrumental major. Pretty soon, I was walking by Lincoln Center and Juilliard every morning, certain that this was a stepping stone to my dreams of becoming a musician. A choir musician from the Bronx could totally happen. It was a time of possibilities. I had my dad to thank for that. The security guard at the education building asks me to wait in the Frederick Lowe Theater. I sit in the back while rehearsal for a play is underway, as I imagine being a student at this university. Suddenly, one of the students on the stage says, pretending as though I can't hear or as if I'm not even there, and rather audibly, who is she? Who said she could sit here? I know my father as Sway G, and he spells it like S-W-A-Y, and I think it's sweet. He's always been a mystery to me, from his name, age, previous occupation, and history in Cambodia, to what hurts him and excites him, and an entire spectrum of emotions I've not been privy to. One catches a glimpse of him through a handheld in a short walk, or the occasional gruff comment, such as when he caught me putting on foundation too dark and red for my complexion and grunted that I didn't need to wear makeup, or that I didn't need to shave my legs because my mom barely has hair on hers. It's a tough love or a gruff love in his voice. A tender kiss could undo all of that. During my 20s, I remember he got a new wallet in the midst of transferring all his cards to the new one. I saw an old photo of me from when I was a toddler with years of creases on it. He was the one I was visiting that day at the university, NYU, by the way, where he had been a porter for some 2 decades. This is where that comment in the theater happened. In addition to being a porter, my father occasionally operated the manual elevator, making small talk with the professors who remember the tan man with the warm smile and a scar on the corner of his mouth that never quite healed. The security guard is his coworker. They are part of a cohort of people in the invisible network of workers that keep the school running for young people speaking dialects of lightened complexions who use this city as a playground for their youthful exploration. My earliest memory of his workplace is the black unmarked van parked outside. It reminded me of the A-Team, the TV show my father watched about the ex-Green Berets turned mercenaries who were court-martialed during the Vietnam War. I didn't know that my father trained with their real-life counterparts in South Vietnam before he met my mother. He didn't get patriotic theme music to play over his highlights. No one played trumpet fanfare when he got on a plane to San Francisco with his family as a newly arrived refugee. He kept a dictionary in his workplace locker, one of many books he saved from the mountain pile heap outside the education building. He told me about this book from which he looked up words during his free moments when he heard things he didn't understand. He wasn't afraid to learn. He didn't want to live in ignorance or risk being like the uneducated and soulless communists who held his country captive. My father brought home books, the school piled on the curb, perfectly fine books, to make room for new books. At first, it was The Language Instinct, then Common Ground, an Asian American studies book that outlined the rhetoric of my racial struggle. I began to request scores for flute music to play at the specialized music school he barely allowed me to audition for, the one that took his daughter far away from him to Manhattan. He would return pages of Bach flute sonatas ripped out of some book in a language I had yet to understand was German. I would practice in the bedroom adjacent to my sleeping parents while the number 2 train screeched above ground across the entire neighborhood. Among the discarded rubble, he would come home with old music school audition tapes full of tender compositions and performances by hopeful teenagers in small American towns, their dreams filling my teenage Bronx bedroom. I listened to them put all their hopes into an object that would be one among many. Would I end up in that heap waiting for garbage pickup among all the other discarded lives? In Cambodia, just after the Khmer Rouge took power in April of 1975, they rounded up soldiers of the former regime. My father was among them. He was corralled into a vehicle with others like him. In other scenarios I've read about, Khmer Rouge cadres at least lied, saying that the newly installed regime was looking for a specific skill set. Not so in my father's case. There was no mistaking what would happen. The destination would either be a forced labor camp or execution. I tell my therapist about this new bit of information I learned about my father. This reminds me of Auschwitz, she says. She is Jewish. The nutritional department where my father spent his last few years working decided to throw him a retirement party. He was beloved. When his colon cancer had kept him out of work, everyone chipped in to buy him a generously sized gift basket. He's been in remission for some time now. This time they asked him what kind of food he wanted served at his gathering. For that day, his wife, my mom, I and my child came out to see what the fuss was all about. Hungry graduate students, admin staff, professors dropped in, and then there were speeches, unexpected gestures by people I'd never heard about or only in passing, who were sad to see him leave. They kept congratulating me because I would get to be with my father more. Of course, they didn't know he was retiring to another state, nowhere near me. I looked at the enormous chocolate cake with chocolate mousse, chocolate frosting, and chocolate ganache on top. When I inquired with the chef about it, she said, "Oh, she loves chocolate." Who was this man I was looking at? How did I live with him for years and not know he loved chocolate? A detail, hi Daddy, I hope you're watching. A detail I likely would have taken advantage of because of my own sweet tooth. How did I not know something as basic as that? Did he always? Did he take a liking to it more recently? All my life. I never saw him stop at the store to buy himself a candy bar or indulge in a chocolate treat from the store. He never seemed interested in sweet items and only bought them for his children when asked. In the speeches given by professors of the department, it's my first time hearing people praise my father and publicly. Not only had he been a good worker, but he had gained the confidence of the staff, and some considered him a friend after years of small conversations. I don't recognize this person, they regaled. After the event, I pondered this stranger whom people referred to as my father. My final image is of him wearing his company uniform gray shirt with the company logo and blue Dickies too loose from the weight he lost during his cancer at the party. They bought him a replica of the British crown to wear, and it clashes with his blue collar wardrobe. I wonder, what did these people truly know about him aside from conversations after a cooking class, after which he would take home leftover cupcakes to his grandchild? My biggest regret was now giving a speech of my own, one that showed them exactly the kind of person they employed, this enigma of a man who had survived so much. The speech in my head went something like this. My father has always been somewhat of a stranger to me, but here's what I do know. His legal name is G. Svay, though his real name is Peng Nhiet. He was born and raised in Cambodia in a southwestern town called Takao to a family of rice farmers. He went to a school while Cambodia was a protector of France. And so he was educated in French, after which he joined into the military where he ranked as a master sergeant. He was in the northwestern city of Battambang when the Khmer Rouge had taken over. In many Khmer surviving memoirs, it's reported that soldiers of the former regime would be exterminated. By some divine grace, my father was spared. During his hospital stay at a Khmer Rouge-run clinic to treat an infection, he was briefly employed as a scribe, taking down patient names and medicine inventory. He lost a young son to complications from malnourishment. After the regime fell, my father took his family through the jungle to the neighboring border of Thailand, to the refugee camps, once waiting out monsoon rain for days. At the camps, he worked with the United Nations High Commissioner for Refugees and was given the responsibility to document the names and family members of various parties. There was a certain amount of rice allotted for every person. He manipulated the system so that he could write down an extra few people in his family, including even his dead son. The extra rice he gained, he sold in the black market in the camp for Thai baht, the currency that flowed throughout the camp. When they asked him what country he wanted to relocate to, he said, "Put me where they have jobs. I want to work." He came to the United States in 1981 with his family, was relocated to the Bronx. He initially worked at the university's dental center, but eventually transferred to the education building, where he's been since. He survived a regime, the loss of a son, a treacherous jungle crossing, 2 refugee camps, and colon cancer. This man has operated your manual elevator, has cleaned your floors, brought home food and literature you left behind for his family. Although he and I have learned so much through his time here, I want you to learn about this person you've seen all these days. Did you imagine this man who trained with the Green Berets, who quietly wipes down the counters and mops the spilled vegetable cuttings in the kitchen, lived and survived a significant part of this country's history? Did you imagine that he'd seen his own toddler son starve to death, that he carried his surviving son on his shoulders in chest-deep water, leaving the only home he knew, or an uncertain future, because the unknown was more promising for his family than what they had left? Next slide. There are the parts of us that we only allow certain people to see. If we are lucky, there is an overlap, such as the chocolate. SYG has left this building for the greener pastures of Georgia. Next slide. The early evening begins and spring has arrived on our last night together in England. We sit outside with pints you full and me at half, outside a place named the Eastern Bloc, laughing at its outdated name. Let me take a picture of you, capture you on the iPhone I grudgingly decide to use, a device that seems to steal more of my memories than it captures. Spring has arrived, but so is the late afternoon that war promises, replaced with the promise of tomorrow. That doesn't stop this post-work crowd from wrapping themselves up in a jacket, cigarettes ruled out, you've quit and I've never done, speaking in regional accents from the north. The expression of love in the face is a warmth in the eyes and cheeks, not a forced grin, but the kind that slips onto the face, that slowly lights up the outer edges of that which we present to the world. And so often we protect it from others, from showing the vulnerability of love, this letting go of our facade. But tonight, I am convinced of your content. The stubble in your face makes a shadow as it turns into evening. You'll probably shave again tomorrow out of habit, out of desire to keep my face from chafing. A small act and gesture, but still with significance. Your hair is short, parted easily to the side without fanfare, because we both like to spend our time being ourselves in the world, than concerning ourselves with where our hair falls. Some people are embarrassed by the wrinkles around their eyes, but those are the most expressive. They ease into your kind look. The person on the receiving end of this photo is of great meaning. And in this way, this portrait makes my presence valuable. Soon you'll have to zip up that jacket, but there will be an opening in your sleeve for my arm. The bounce of your youthful walk requires an adjustment for my height, but it makes me nostalgic to remember the time that someone saw the whole universe in me. Let me hold you now. No matter the reason that you told me no. I just wanted you to be there, to hold closer and take me in your arms. Baby, please stay. Been thinking about you every single day. I know that we should be apart, but I don't want it that way. Is it just one in my arms? That's what my heart feels. That's how I know it's real. Just want you to love me. Just want you to love me. That's what my heart feels. That's how I know it's real. Just want you to love me. That's how I know it's real. Just want you to love me. Just want you to love me. That's what my heart feels. That's how I know it's real. Just want you to love me. No matter the reason that you told me now. I just wanted you to feel it, to hold me closer and take me in your arms. Okay, next slide. All right. This is the last one. And then the last song. Okay. The 90s singer Jeff Buckley told me I should go back to music school. So I did. But technically, I didn't actually enroll in music school as an adult until about 2 years later, but the statement makes a very dramatic opening. I was listening to some of his songs as a young mother and became obsessed with him, after which his music filtered in my subconscious, where he inhabited my dreams. What's so intriguing about dead singers? Maybe it's the idea of lost potential, like Cambodia's prolific singer-songwriter Sin Si Samut, who disappeared during the Khmer Rouge regime. The amount he sang and wrote could rival Franz Schubert and his leader, and Herr Schubert died from old-fashioned venereal disease. I was in a new place, past my postpartum depression with a few childless hours during the day, with the inevitable question of what I would do once he was in school full-time. The purgatory that my child's infancy and toddler stage provided wouldn't last forever, and I'd be pushed back out into the world without any clue as to what I would do for a career. I couldn't go back to being a program assistant at the university, but for now I tried to push those fears and anxiety to the side. I just wanted to sing. I would ride it out with music until I had things figured out. I was allowing myself a privilege that most of my background will never know. I had never known exploration except as resistance to my parents. The first Asian American poet I had read, who I'm still a fangirl of to this day, we're friends now, is Kimiko Han. In her poem, The Heat, the speaker describes an extramarital affair which eventually comes to a close with a very physical sense of her departure from the lover. She has decided to end things, and he says, "Save it for your fucking poems." What was that strange music? But it's more than the affair. It's about the heat of desire, of memory, of want and longing, the spillage of warmth from the chest seeping outward toward the rest of the body. The heat takes on the whole body until it reaches the fingertips, until the point of contact. It is about womanhood, sexuality, and gendered roles. Who are we in those moments of heat and then outside of it? What is that strange music she refers to? Literal or metaphorical? Then again, what if the strange music wasn't music at all? What if it was the echo of refugee survivors whose words and anxiety were so ingrained in my head that it was on loop, like some post-traumatic melody? What if the strange music I was encountering was a new song with which to view my life? One where music didn't have to earn money in order to have a place. It's unthinkable, really, as a Cambodian, when you consider we've only been here since the late 1970s as refugees, with 90% of our writers killed alongside intellectuals, teachers, and other artists, such as our musicians. It was all strange music to my parents, the various genres of music I was involved in, including dance music as well as classical Western, and then the sound of their surviving child wanting to play flute and sing for a living. My brother Sotir, who died from dysentery during the regime, would he have become a musician or held onto the guild of survival to keep him from pursuing non-productive hobbies? Where was my survivor's guilt? I put it to the side. I was resisting, I was distancing, I was resistancing. The first day I entered Queens College campus as a music student at the Aaron Copland School of Music at the age of 32, was it? I'm not in my 30s anymore. The German art song An die Musik by Franz Schubert came on, a well-known and popular song for voice students in his vast repertoire. But the song coming on at this exact moment hit different this time, as the kids say. The piece, with its strophic 2-verse stanza, is an homage to the power of this art form. For even the dark places our heart's eyes and mind must attend to, the mysteries of music kindle the heart. Du holde Kunst, ich danke dir. Tears formed in my eyes as I walked through the entrance. Beloved art, for this I thank you. All my college credits transferred over seamlessly, so I was left only to take music courses. It was a joyful idea, cramped by the required music listening lists, of which there were probably a dozen hours of music per year for which you were tested on. I was suddenly immersed in music all day and evening. Classes were during the day when my child was in kindergarten. I took courses in music history, music theory, sight singing, keyboard, and ensemble group, in addition to weekly voice lessons. Every evening was spent practicing keyboard exercises, oftentimes Bach chorales assigned by our music theory professor, Dr. C. In addition, there were sight singing exercises we were graded on, so I had to practice those in the evening as well, along with learning my art songs or arias for upcoming voice recitals. Choral music I could fake a bit more easily, so I didn't worry too much about that. But I was a mother with a young child with hours of college undergraduate homework. It was a near impossible task, and my mood showed it. I was short with my family, always worried about getting the homework done, that I became an unpleasant person to be around. So far, it wasn't shaping into the experience that I thought it would be. Yes, I loved what it represented and that I got to focus on music outside of being a mother, but I couldn't compartmentalize the two parts of my life. They would merge, and sometimes with disaster. It came to a standstill almost literally when I took the theory finals my third and final semester of music school. We were seated and tested and handed out, and then a bizarre thing happened. I stared at the test for 2 hours, maybe more. All that I'd learned from the class had completely disappeared from my memory. I was frozen, completely blanked on how to even begin this task of answering music theory questions. What were these notes? What what did chord progression names with their Roman letters, counterpoint and figured bass realization were difficult enough on a good day when my head was on red? Bless you. But this was a bewildering encounter. Indeed, there was strange music on that piece of paper. Not long after, I realized I wouldn't. Bless you, honey. No worries. Not long after, I realized I wouldn't return to music school that fall. I somehow managed to get through the test and barely passed the class. I was in my 30s sitting with folks who still had pimples on their faces. It was an undergraduate program. Sometimes with my kid in tow, I was rooting for all my classmates, especially the ones I could see struggling. It was important that we all succeeded. Even in my anxious state, my mothering instincts made me want to, ruh-roh. My mothering instincts made me want to protect those young students around me. This begged the question, how could I help them? How could getting this music degree help me help people? It didn't. So I left for a master's program to become a teacher, something I feared because students eventually leave, and I'm not good at losing people. But I wanted to help others, and it turns out it was a great fit for me. They say you can't go home again, but I do all the time through music. I have nearly a soundtrack for every memory. My relationship to music and memory is intricate. It can play with word association where someone says a word and I can locate a song with the word in it immediately. Or if there's a feeling someone is talking about, I can go through my mind palace and there, in some forgotten folder, are songs for this occasion. Music finds a way of being compartmentalized in this brain of mine, and with it, certain associations from my past. I think that I live in the past through music, but concurrently it brings that past to the present, and so by recalling specific songs, I perform time travel. This way, home exists in my past, my memory, and in my future. Or perhaps it's a multiverse, a layered combination of numerous realities. Either way, none of it feels linear. Nowhere is this time travel more present than in the performance of music, particularly my singing. My way of interacting with the world is through melody. It was and still is one of the greatest joys in my life to sing a note, to string together a melody in the strongest part of my range. My choral experiences as a child and adult were where I learned how to contribute to community, where I learned how to sing my part within a composition, how to blend with others. I didn't know that being taught how to sing could be joyous. I felt joy before I could even name it. It was there in those rehearsals. And so the second time I left music school was as an adult. The music that filled those hallways haunt me whenever I walk in the Copeland School. The last song I sang in music school was Un Jardin d'Amour by Emile Viermos. It was a song I had come across on an album by one of my favorite sopranos, Karina Gauvin. It was a gentle close to 3 semesters in this program where I wanted to relive childhood musical dreams. It has a dreamy melody with the enticing sentence that leads you in as a singer and listener. When I go to the garden of love. This piano accompaniment is elaborate, quasi-harp in the way the pianist's fingers glide across the keys. It feels like you are awash in the spelled out chord progressions as the singer goes on to talk about what exists in the garden of love, a garden of love that becomes un jardin de la musique. What I am failing to say is that to hear the song is to listen to my own heartache. At its end, the song slows down with only just a chord or two to punctuate the elongation of her final note. It's like a closing of the musical school doors behind me, the closing on amour, that first love, so I could focus on how I could give the world something that feels a little less navel-gazing, and to finally grow up. Can you put the final slide, please? In Kimiko's poem, I neglected to mention the final line. What was that strange music? I could go on. Some years after reading that poem, I finally had my own interpretation. But first, to question the placement of the asterisk. It takes up so much real estate between the question and the final line, the strange music of the end of an affair, of the heat that takes over your body, awash in that desire. What is it like to suddenly have that change, to disappear? It hangs in the air as the asterisk, the sense of clarity. For clarity, to me, is that strange music that has descended upon both the subject of the poem and me. And armed with it now, I can move on. Okay, just wanted to give big up to Asian American Writers Workshop. Thank you so much for hosting the first ever Cambodian Writers event. Special thanks to Devin, Sophia, teacher and Lay. Shout out to my family and friends who are here, to those who are watching. Love you. Shout out to Allia, abdullah-matta for her musicality and for this love that she has. And biggest thanks to Anthony Lanni. He made these Cambodian songs come to life, and has become a good friend. And now the final song, everybody.